And this is all Blake. Like I said, Blake was involved in all aspects of this production, and she is also a marketing genius. Her and Ryan together are something else. But this was all Blake, and she knew that the song would work, and she got Taylor to do it, and I was just nothing to do with it. I was just so grateful that Taylor agreed. And
Dream team. The soundtrack is amazing. Like 10 out of 10. I've been listening for.
Hi, besties. Do you remember a couple months ago, I got a tip from someone and they had told me that WME was more behind all of this feud than most people would like us to believe, because WME controls so much in the media and they have a stake in ensuring that the two actors that they went with, Blake and Ryan, who have made them a lot of money, remain marketable. They have a vested interest in ensuring that their clients get the right coverage in the media, and that it wasn't just Leslie Sloan that was doing this, but also the powerful powerhouse of WME. And do you recall I told you that people had said, and there had been rumors for a long time, that WME was using bots and mass flagging, mass reporting, and that they are known to inflate numbers with, follower accounts for their actors and actresses, because people today are hired based on their numbers on social media for many production companies. And did I also tell you that amid that, there was a lot of fear about people coming forward and saying these things about WME because they had the power to blacklist and basically ruin careers and keep people out of the industry? So Jed Wallace just filed his documents that he provided to Blake. And Blake did an omnibus motion to compel last week. And she filed all of these records from people. And as a part of that, she indirectly is making people have to fight to keep these documents under seal. But not all of it is confidential. And so some of it has to be unredacted or, made public. And so Jed Wallace just sent a letter and he asked that the court keep certain aspects of his documents under seal or redacted, like his bank account, phone number, email, social medias. And then they filed the whole exhibit that Blake had filed into the court docket. And I thought it was interesting because last week Blake did a motion to strike and she was all, "You're just doing this to force people to have to fight to keep things sealed," when the omnibus document absolutely is making people fight to keep things sealed. But in this production that Jed made, there's a text thread in here and there's some answers to some of these interrogatories, and there's answers to interrogatories, but there's this text thread and it's from late January into February. And this would have been at the peak when everything was kicking off, when the lawsuits were just getting filed, when Justin's career was in a tailspin, and, Melissa Nathan and everyone's being accused of running the smear campaign. So the messages include Brianna Koslow, Brian Friedman, Dervla, Jamie Heath, Jason Sunshine, Jen Abel, Michael Lawrence, Mitra, who's an attorney. I think Michael's one of their attorneys too. Mitz Toskovic, Melissa Nathan, Rosa, Riley Long, Spencer, Summer Benson, and Teresa Legal. Okay. So there's some attorneys on here. And Jed put this into the documents. Okay. And Melissa sent a message and says, "Why is the entire website deleted?" And then Rosa said, "Also access removed. I'm assuming for security reasons. Doc is hopefully downloaded somewhere." And then Mitz Daskovic says, "Are we talking about the Google Doc or website? I have made a new Google Doc. The one Rosa started wasn't saving. And I believe the website was scrubbed because all the info would need uploaded again anyway." And Rosa said, "The Google Doc." And then Mitz wrote, yes, new Google Doc is with Jamie and Justin for review, and then we'll pass off to the rest, Mel, Jen, legal, and then Rosa. So they were talking about creating a website where they were going to put out all the evidence, and it sounds like they were going to do it in a Google Doc. But it sounds like they didn't do this because when the website actually went live, it just said the lawsuit info, and it had the amended complaint along with Exhibit A. And Rosa said, okay, great, thanks. And then Rosa said, hi, no, nothing is live on the website or in staging. We were just asking about timeline document that we were working on. So the timeline of relevant events, I believe, is what they were talking about. So that was the document that she's trying to get from Rosa, but she already has it from Jed. I don't know what she's doing here. Rosa's with Skyline Agency. But there's a thread here on the 22nd of February, and it's them watching and sharing stuff from the social media universe. And one is a video. It's Jamie sharing it. It's of Zach Peter talking about some sort of HR complaint, and he's saying that no HR complaints were filed. Jed says, I love me some Zach Peter. Jed Wallace says, also a nice breakdown here. I hope everyone is having a beautiful family night. So this would have been when there was 3 HR complaints that were leaked, if you recall this. And people were like, are these real or not real? And I honestly just read them today. This is ironic that this is getting discussed in these text messages. And they are so fake. They sound so fake. But Jen says, thanks for keeping me on track of all of this, Jed. I appreciate you. So Jed was literally just sending them videos of what people were saying online, which would be, I guess, passively watching, right? And then Jed says, likewise, the forensic guys put it all in the reports, but some I just enjoy more than others. So apparently Wayfarer is keeping track of what is being said online, I'm assuming, because, I mean, if you're trying to monitor what's happening online, the best way to prove it's organic is by monitoring what's being posted. And then Justin shares a link to a Hollywood Reporter article. And this was the article where it was like, Blake slammed it because she said that they were sexist, and it was David versus Goliath, and it was about the Baha'i faith. And there was some stuff in there that was kind of over the top, but it wasn't necessarily like heavily, I guess, it wasn't so heavily negative. It was better than some of the other versions of what they had put out. And Melissa Nathan said, oh my God. And Jed Wallace says, B versus B does a B, domestic alone. And then Justin says, Jen and Melissa, this was just sent to Travis's agent, and it's for Travis Van Winkle, a documentary request. I'm a producer at Optimum, an Emmy and BAFTA award-winning company based in London. We are currently producing a 3-part, 1-hour documentary series with Blake and Justin's dispute for the global streaming platform. This project follows in the footsteps of our previous rigorous research docuseries for Discovery and HBO, which have covered the high-profile celebrity trials in recent years. The first documentary will explore the articles, leaks, legal complaints, and lawsuits leading up to the libel trials. I wanted to reach out because Travis Van Winkle has known Justin for over 20 years and appeared on his Man Up podcast and might be able to speak to what he is like. I'd very much like to discuss the project in detail with you on a background basis and answer any questions you might have, in the hope that we might be ultimately able to include any interviews with Travis. Please let me know. And it was Maya Adelia. And then Ahmed something says, she emailed me too, same email. And then Mitra says, oh, I worked with them before. They did a discovery doc for the Johnny Depp case that I was in that one. Another British doc, Pro Co, reached out to ITN. They're doing an hour-long one, not sure which streamer. So they're just sharing stuff, just plain Zach, another one. And then they're sharing something from X from Melanie King. And Jed says, this is excellent sleuthing. Then Jed shares something that says Blake's been named to the top 100 most powerful women in Hollywood. He then shares another link to a status by Melanie King. And then Jed Wallace on the 23rd says, happy Sunday. And while there are videos surfacing where Hoover says that Jenny Slate was responsible for Blake coming on board, will be in the report, let's file this link under, we are in a whole new media landscape. It's awesome. And they shared a photo link to Melanie King. And then they shared a video of Ellsrick and saying that her videos were getting taken down for community guidelines and for violating community guidelines. And Jed Wallace sends another link of one of Melanie King's statuses. Justin says, this is actually funny. You can see her lying in the moment. And it's a interview of Blake and Isabella. And they're speaking on, I think that's a Netherlands media junket. That, oh God, that interview is so awkward. And then Jed says, this is the same playbook. They are out here mass bot reporting, insane. So he's saying that Blake's side is mass reporting videos about people, and they're using mass botting to report to get stuff taken down. And then Jamie Heath shared a video of someone saying it's almost like this woman was with them. And then Jed Wallace shared another one from someone else, citizen journalist. And then Mitra is talking about the Hollywood Reporter and says, oh, they changed the entire article, not just the word complaint. And Justin said, is that legal? And she said, yes, legal, but not really ethical if they make more than factual changes. The fact that fans are calling this out and getting enraged is good. And without notations of changes or footnotes, Jed Wallace said, we can reach out to the writer and question the changes and get into it with them. But part of me thinks it's almost better that fans call this out and bring notice to the hypocrisy of the publication versus getting into a back and forth with them. And then they're talking about a Hollywood Reporter article, and it says this story has been updated to provide additional context regarding Ari Emanuel's quotes about Lively and Baldoni. Due to a technical glitch, a portion of the story regarding Jenny Slate reverted to an earlier updated, unedited version and has since been updated. TRH regrets the error. And then Melissa says they apparently had technical pictures, according to Pam, on socials because it kept pushing out the stories, negative stories as well. Ridiculous. So they're talking about, again, that article about the David versus Goliath, big piece on the Hollywood Reporter. And then Jen says, I'm going to have them change the part about the 30-point document. That's a new ad as well. They say that you all signed off on a 30-point document and that a spokesperson for Lively says that because of the no more language that you admit culpability. So this is literally, she's claiming that this is an ongoing smear campaign, but she's responding to an inquiry in an article where there's a direct quote from Blake's claiming that they took responsibility and so they're going to respond to that. Is that an ongoing smear campaign, or is that actually, responding to negative press and trying to, refute it? And Justin says, as you know, that's completely false. So they never signed off on the 30-point agreement. And Jen says, yep. And Jen says, I just wrote them. And then Justin says, I wish Brian could make a statement that points out their hypocrisy and the fact that they are also funded by WME and Penske. We're watching them rewrite history in real time, claiming website errors just like the disappearance of the podcast. That would be funny. So he's saying that the Hollywood Reporter is funded by Penske Media and WME, and that WME is using their media connections to rewrite the narrative of what happened on the set and using their media connections to get a side of the story out that's beneficial to them, that's not too negative to WME. And I think this was around the time that Ari was on a podcast where he admitted that he fired Baldoni because Blake and Ryan told him that he was a predator and he was into bad stuff and he was going to ride or die and stay with Blake and Ryan all day long. And Justin said, we're watching in real time how Ari Emanuel covers his tracks. So Ari is on a podcast, and the podcast, you can't find it anywhere. And audio is leaked of him on this podcast, and he is admitting that he fired Baldoni because Ryan and Blake told him to, and that he was always going to ride or die with them. And so then they're putting out an article about it, and they keep changing the narrative. And they're using an outlet that Justin says is partially funded by WME, which makes me wonder now how much of this manipulation that we're seeing in the media and all of these articles that appear to be the same, where they're calling all of us that speak about them, driven by WME. He says, we're watching in real time how Ari Emanuel covers his tracks, because Blake and Ryan he doesn't want Blake and Ryan held responsible for getting them fired over lies, right? And Justin says, I also think it's important to note that we gave them the truth earlier and it now is on the 4th version because they've gotten heat in real time and it's all a bunch of bullshit. Again, about him getting fired. And they've given so many different iterations about, first they said they had nothing to do with him getting fired. Then they said, we cut ties based on our own accord. And then it's like, after 4 different times, then he says, oh yeah, they told me to, and I'm ride or die for them. And Mitra says lie after lie after lie. If we weren't seeing it for ourselves, it would sound like one of those conspiracy theories. So then mocking how they keep calling the people that are reporting this conspiracy theories. So what I'm seeing here in this text exchange is not that they are actually running a smear campaign. I see them watching what's happening on social media, like I think a lot of people have been, much like Blake and Ryan's teams do, sharing different clips and links and, posts that they're like, I can't believe this was discovered, or this is amazing, or whatever. And then they're noting that when the podcast came out where Ari Emanuel admits finally that he did fire them, Baldoni, at the direction of Ryan and Blake, then the podcast gets deleted. It's no longer available. Articles about the podcast are removed from the Hollywood Reporter where he says it. And he's flexing his muscles to cover up what he did and said because it would harm his clients. So again, WME using bots, WME covering up their role because of funding Penske Media and all of the Penske outlets. So Penske Media is Variety, Rolling Stone, Women's Wear Daily, Deadline Hollywood, Billboard, The Hollywood Reporter, Boy Genius Report, Rob Report, Art Forum, Art News. So those are the big ones. So the big ones again, Variety, Rolling Stone, Deadline Hollywood, The Hollywood Reporter, and they've all kind of had similar stories that have overwhelmingly been favorable to Ryan Reynolds. Now, it's not reported that WME actually funds them. There's been some discussion about different wealth funds. They sold a stake to a Saudi Arabia sovereign wealth fund, but it's interesting. At one point, Penske was funded by the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund, but they cut ties in 2018 when there was a journalist that was killed. And Ari's talent agency was also in the middle of a $400 million deal with the same fund, with the same people. So they were like loosely connected, but not, I don't know that he ever funded them. But I do think that he has enough power and influence that he could 100% influence these outlets to report things that are in his favor because he has the ability to not give access to his clients to these outlets. So yeah, Ari Emanuel is behind the scenes, rewriting history, using bots to mass report, trying to help his clients, and removing and trying to scrub information from the internet. That is absolutely wild. It's almost like Blake got evidence of Wayfarer talking about how Blake and Ari Emanuel and Ryan are running a smear campaign against them and using the mainstream media in order to do it. Wow. Unreal. It's almost like they've been telling the truth the whole time. I don't know. What are your thoughts when you saw it? And again, I don't see any evidence of a smear campaign. So tell me what your thoughts are about this. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.